Okay, there we go. So we got the recording for YouTube going, and we got the one for Twitter, of course. No one's here right now. I just opened a space spur at the moment to make sure we can make some progress in this text. So maybe people will show up while I'm reading, maybe not. And so maybe we'll just blaze right through it and not have any discussion or questions. We'll see how it goes. Awakening to one's dreaming. Magpie Dew was asking questions of tall parasol tree. I have heard from our master, the sage does not serve public duties. He does not indiscriminately go for profit. He does not indiscriminately avoid necessary harm. He does not enjoy chasing after things. He does not conform to any way. By not stating things, he makes a higher statement. By stating things, he makes no ordinary statement. And so he roams beyond the mere dust and dirt of this world. Our master regarded these as wildly extravagant propositions, but I regard this as the very practice of the mysterious way. What are your impressions on this? Tall Parasol Tree said, in the ears of a yellow emperor, this would cause confusion. So how would friend Confucius be qualified to understand it? Moreover, you yourself are greatly over-hasty in your assessment. You notice an egg and expect the morning call of the cock. You see a crossbow and expect to see a ready roasted bird. Let me try to provide you a crazy account of this, and you must listen to these in the same crazy spirit. So how does this work? One sides with the sun and the moon. One holds the universe of space and time under one's armpit. One practices that amalgamation of things, but leaves things to their messy chaos. As a slave, one honors that mess. Ordinary people are busybodies. The sage is dull and blunt. He partakes in the evolution of all the myriad of bygone years, but with a single perspective achieves an inner purity. All things, without exception, one takes for what they are, and in this way makes them one's accumulated treasure. How am I to be sure that delighting in life is not a case of being misguided? How am I to be sure that hating death is not a case of a little child getting lost, and having no idea about getting home? Li Zhuji was a daughter of a border official in Ai. When the state of Jin first got hold of her, her tears streamed over her collar. And only when she got to the king's place, to share the bamboo bed with him, to eat the meats of grass and grain-eating animals, only after all that did she regret her tears. How would I ever be certain that those who have died are not regretting that they had been so attached to life? After dreaming that one was feasting on wine, in the morning one wakes up all wailing and weeping. After dreaming that one is all wailing and weeping, in the morning one wakes up to go on a happy hunt. While the dream lasts, one is not aware that one is dreaming. But in one's dream one may go on to divine the meaning of that dream. Only after one has woken up does one come to understand this was a dream. But in addition to all this, it is only after the Great Awakening that one comes to realize that this life was all just one big dream. On the contrary, the stupid consider themselves to be wide awake. They imagine that surreptitiously they understand the situation. You're a ruler, huh? You're a shepherd, huh? Stubbornly thick, that's what you are. Confucius along with you, you are all figments in a dream. And just as I take you to be figments in a dream, so am I too a figment in a dream. Words of this order are labelled mere bickering, but there will come a time when, after myriads of generations, all of a sudden, one will come upon a great sage who will know the explanation of all this. And this meeting will come to pass in no more than one day time. Let us assume that I have a quibble with you. If you win against me, and I am not up to you, will you then in fact be right? and will I then be wrong? If I beat you, and you are not up to me, am I then in fact right? And are you then in fact wrong? Is someone right here, and is someone else here wrong? Or are both right? Or again, are both wrong? If I and you are incapable of being sure of the matter at hand, then others will certainly be affected by this profound dark muddle. So who is one to employ to sort out the matter objectively? Shall one employ someone who agrees with you to sort out the matter objectively? But since he agrees with you to start with, how is he capable to sort out the matter objectively? Shall one employ someone who agrees with me to sort out the matter objectively? Since he agrees with me to start with, how can he sort out the matter objectively? Shall one employ someone who differs on this with both of us to sort out the matter objectively? Since he differs on this with both of us, how can he sort out the matter objectively? Shall we employ someone who agrees on this with both of us? Since he agrees on this with both of us, how can he sort out the matter objectively? It follows from all this that I, you, and that third person, agreeing with both of us, have this in common, that they cannot be sure of the matter at hand. So are we to depend on some other? That's the end of the section. So what I'll do is what I usually do and go back through the text, and someone's messaging me and telling me I gotta go pick him up. Hold on, dude. We're gonna go back through the text. I'm going to give a few comments on it. I don't have any notes or anything written out, so it's gonna be kind of on the fly. I don't have that much time, but we'll get through it. I think it is again one of my favorite books, and this section. Well, I mean, all the sections are good. But alright, let's just go through it. Magpie Jew was asking questions of Tall Parasol Tree. I have heard from our master. Now, the commentaries here is pointing out that a lot of the times in ZhuangZi, it's like, or at least in the inner chapters, they're in a self-evidently Confucian world. So where it says, I've heard from the master, it's not explicitly saying Confucius there, but yeah, it's basically, it's Fuzi, Kongzi, yeah. It's always assuming like the master or the sage or whoever is Confucius. And we see that established again later. Chiu, Kong Chiu. So Chiu is showing up later. So yeah, okay, so it seems like for much of the inner chapters of the ZhuangZi, the sage is just presumed to be Confucius. At least that's what the commentators say. Some of them. I don't necessarily dispute that. It is an interesting point, though. If we're just going to assume that in this world Confucius is said to be the sage, or at least the master, because again, it's I've heard from our master, but of course then he's going to come in for some criticism later. The sage does not serve public duties. He does not indiscriminately go for profit. He does not indiscriminately avoid necessary harm. He does not enjoy chasing after things. He does not conform to any way. By not stating things, he makes a higher statement. By stating things, he makes no ordinary statement. And so he roams beyond the mere dust and dirt of this world. Our master regarded these as wildly extravagant positions, but I regard this as the very practice of the mysterious way. What are your impressions on this? Yeah, as I was reading this, I was like, well, it doesn't sound necessarily Confucian, but some of it sounds positively sort of Taoist or mystical, like not stating things, stating things. They've, of course, in the brackets you can see in the screenshot of the text, they put the word higher and ordinary, but yeah, basically he speaks without speaking. And when he speaks, he doesn't, they characterize it as ordinary, but he's like speaking without speaking, essentially. So why would Tall Parasol Tree criticize this? Because, yeah, the sage isn't chasing after victories or profits. He's not avoiding harm. I mean, he's not... They've, again, they've kind of characterized it as conform to any way. But at least he's not trying to pursue some way, or he's not trying to be a way that he's not, or try to make himself a certain way. And he doesn't love chasing things. Yeah, this all sounds good to me. Again, by not speaking, you say something. so you can speak without speaking. And and in this way of being a sage and having a broader mindset and not abusing or subordinating your nature to some desire or pursuit or some false way of being, you're beyond the mere dust and dirt of this world. Confucius apparently thinks this is wildly extravagant propositions. Fair enough. But Magpie Zhu thinks that this is the way of practicing the way. Tall Parasol Tree said, in the ears of a yellow emperor, this would cause confusion. All right. Now you can see on the chapter text that's up in the nest that they've dropped a footnote here. Again, this is coming from the inner chapters of the ZhuangZi with copious annotations from the Chinese commentaries. Actually, there's not that many commentators quoted in this section that I've read, but but it's what they do say here is this means that the way is difficult to understand, and even the Yellow Emperor will be confused when he hears about it. Well, okay, that's justifying the way they're translating it or characterizing it, I suppose. What's interesting to me is, in the ears of a Yellow Emperor, why Yellow Emperor versus friend Confucius? I mean, who is Yellow Emperor? It's depending on what source you're reading on, but he's like a mythical kind of leader of humanity or the Chinese civilization. He introduces like centralized government, I guess, or like strong forms of organization, and he introduces weapons. Depends on the source you're reading, but the Yellow Emperor is like this mythical figure who institutes all sorts of things like a strong government and military. He also succeeds, again, depending on the source, because all these mythological, or we'll call them quasi-historical figures. Because I don't dispute that ZhuangZi may be a real person in some way. Obviously he's got a lot of stories associated with his name, but depending on the source, he also succeeds Shen Nong, who is sort of the agricultural figure. Again, depending on the source, it could be a violent takeover, but basically you go from this placid Taoist utopia, depending on the source, of Shen Nong, where people work in the fields, women sew clothes, we all live in our little village, don't worry about the village next door, and there's no strong central government to organize and direct us towards various goals, and there's certainly no military drills and halberds and going off to battle. But ZhuangZi brings that. But maybe I'm reading too much into it here, because if you said this to ZhuangZi, he'd be confused. So how could Confucius know anything about this? Moreover, you yourself are greatly over hasty in your assessment. You notice an egg and expect the morning call of the cock. You see a crossbow and expect to see a ready roasted bird. Let me try to provide for you a crazy account of this, and you must listen to these in the same crazy spirit. Okay, crazy or like unreasonable or false or wrong or... Yeah, okay. But this thing about the egg and the rooster or cock and the crossbow and ready roasted bird, again, there's not no commentators are quoted on that line, but I know myself from having looked at commentators, the one way to take it is Magpie Zhu is so proud of these sayings, doesn't indiscriminately go for profit, doesn't indiscriminately avoid necessary harm, doesn't conform to the way, doesn't do X, Y, Z. And it's like, well, you've got all these rules and now you expect success. It's not about listing these rules. It's not about having, a book, how to make friends or whatever. These are not going to just turn up what you wanted. And so don't be so impressed with this set of rules. Because look, Magpie Zhu, but I regard this as the very practice of the mysterious way. It's like, no, you have a crossbow, but you still got to catch the bird. You got an egg, you still got to guard it, I suppose, and keep it at the right temperature and make sure it hatches and grows to maturity. So, yeah, that's why it's not so impressive. And then he said, listen to this. One sides with the sun and moon, one holds the universe of space and time under one's armpit, one practices that amalgamation of things but leaves things to their messy chaos. As a slave, one honors that mess. Ordinary people are busybodies, the sage is dull and blunt. That's the end of that page. But the, not section, but what I would point out here as well is leaves things to their messy chaos. I mean, what is the ultimate point here that we've seen in earlier chapters? Is like things are what they are, and you can pit things against each other, but that doesn't make one absolutely right and the other absolutely wrong. There's still multiple perspectives, and each thing is what it is, and the sage takes it as it is and can appreciate the whole in all its glory and not try to play partisan or, the sun is better than the moon. It's rather holding it all under one's armpit, I suppose. One practices that amalgamation of things. One sides with the sun and the moon. One holds the universe of space and time under one's armpit. One practices that amalgamation of things. So the amalgamation is like a mixture that doesn't, that I suppose preserves each thing as it is rather than turning it into a new combined substance. But the, well, now I'm just getting into the English too much, but but leaves things to their messy chaos. Point being that he takes it as it is, and he takes them all as they are, and doesn't play partisan. So as a slave, one honors the mess. There's this big mess of all that is, and you honor all of it as it is. Ordinary people can bicker about that, but the sage isn't trying to be clever like that. He's just partakes in the evolution of all the myriads of bygone years, but with a single perspective achieves in inner purity. All things, without exception, one takes for what they are, and in this way makes them one's accumulated treasure. There we go. So the sage, without exception, takes everything as it is, and thereby makes it his treasure, presumably also accepting his own perspective on it. And then he gets into the fresh topic about, how sure can we be when we play partisan that the side we've picked is right. I just have to, one sec. All right, there we go. I just gave myself a little time to get out of here. I'll finish this up and then I gotta head out. All things with... Okay, where were we? How am I to be sure that delighting in life is not a case of being misguided? How am I to be sure that hating death is not a case of a little child getting lost and having no idea about getting back home? I mean, this is very Socratic, right? It's like when Socrates is going to be executed. He's like, well, how do I know that death is not a great blessing? I think it's been a while since I read exactly what he's supposed to have said per Plato, but the one of the lines in there is this claim that hey, maybe I'll get a good night's sleep. Maybe it's like eternity passes in a moment and I have no sensation. Isn't that a nice blessing? It's like going to sleep. And yeah, so it's very Socratic. It's kind of like, how can I be sure that clinging to life isn't the mistake? And they add this line here: how am I to be sure that hating death is not a case of a little child getting lost? What is it? Ruo Sang. Yeah, Ruo Sang. And actually, commentator here says Ruo Sang is a young person who has lost his way. I've also read in a commentary that Ruo Sang is... I don't have it right here, actually. It's like you lost your home or something. Hold on. Where is it? Okay, here we go. To lose one's native place when young is called ruo sang. Youthful loss is how they've translated it there. One who suffers youthful loss tends to become so content with where he consequently finds himself that he knows not to return to his native place. So how do I know that life is not such youthful loss? And how do I know that death would not be such a return that we instead hate? Okay, so it's like, yeah, okay, so the The phrase refers to a young person who lost their native place when young, consequently has grown up somewhere else, and doesn't realize that a death will, or some in this analogy, death is going to take them back to that native place, I suppose, where they do actually belong, I suppose is the implication. That's from a Guoxiang. So I won't do that again. I got to get through this. Where are we? Yeah, okay, so it's like, oh, how do I know death isn't going to take me back home? Li Zhiji was a daughter of a border official in Ai. When the state of Jin first got hold of her, her tears streamed over her collars. This is kind of like the bit from Plutarch in the life of Romulus or whatever, where they go and they kidnap all the women. Because the women, when they are first kidnapped, are obviously displeased with it. But then later, when they have, we'll say, married the men and had children by them, and then their old family or husbands come to retrieve them, they say, hey, don't fight. I don't need a second disaster. I'm actually, I got kids and a family here in Rome. So, again, it's been a long time since I read Plutarch's Life of Romulus, but that's what I recall occurring. The wives go out like, hey, don't... turns out it was okay. I didn't... Obviously, they cried and they wet their collars with their tears, but they don't need a second disaster to befall them, because now actually they found that there were good things on the other side of the fence. Not an advocate of kidnapping myself, but I think that's a similar point here. Only when she got to the king's place to share the bamboo bed with him, to eat the meats of grass and grain-eating animals, only after all that did she regret her tears. So she found out there was some good. I don't know that much about Li Zhiji, so I don't want to say too much on that point, but just generally speaking, isn't it true that when we first start something or we get sent somewhere, we may not enjoy it? Take up a new job, maybe you don't like it at first, maybe it's challenging. But then maybe you find something good about it and you realize, hey, why did I hate it so much? And do I really want to leave it now? And maybe, here we go. How am I to be sure that delighting in life is not a case of being misguided? How am I sure that my hatred of the new job or position itself is not misguided? After dreaming that one was feasting on wine... Oh, that's the line I was actually thinking of. How would I ever be certain that those who have died are not regretting that they had been so attached to life? All right. After dreaming that one was feasting on wine in the morning, one wakes up all wailing and weeping. Well, okay, because you wake up and you're not having the feast. After dreaming that one is all wailing and weeping in the morning, one wakes up to go on a happy hunt. Right, okay, so, yeah. While the dream lasts, one is not aware that one is dreaming. I mean, obviously anyone reading ZhuangZi's is immediately going to say, oh, he's mentioning a dream. It must be... Go reread the bit about the butterfly. Whatever. Which, maybe would be interesting to compare. But in one's dream, one may go on to divine the meaning of that dream. All right. Only after one has woken up does one come to understand this was a dream. But in addition to all this, it is only after the Great Awakening that one comes to realize that this life was all just a big dream. Now, what's really fascinating here, it's putting a dream in a dream, and similarly, it's putting life in a bigger life, or life as a dream within a dream. Because, look, in one's dream... Okay, so one is not aware that one is dreaming. Okay, so you're in the dream. In one's dream, one may go on to define the meaning of that dream. Okay, so you figure out, I'm in a dream, and this is the meaning of that dream, while still in the dream. So you're in a dream, considering a dream. So it's like a dream in a dream. And then you wake up, right? And then you say, oh, it was all a dream. My dreaming, wherein I was examining another dream, was itself a dream. In addition to all this, it is only after the Great Awakening that one comes to realize that this life was all just one big dream. So just like you could be in a dream and examine another dream, and just like you could wake up from a dream and realize the other thing is a dream, so we could wake up from life and realize that life is similarly just a dream. There's some external perspective that might be away from this immediate life. Now, is he saying that's the case? I don't know. He's just laying out the broader context or possibilities or what's plausible, I guess. But I think he's putting everything in its place, right? It's like there's dreams. How do you know your life is not a dream? Why are you clinging so much to this life at the expense of all else? When you don't even know what the all else is, and you're unable to take everything and amalgamate everything and take it as it is as your treasure and understand it all. You're just clinging to one thing as a partisan life with no real appreciation of what else there is and getting too fixated on it. But again, that's me reading into that. On the contrary, the stupid consider themselves to be wide awake. Well, again, you're just assuming that the life is not a dream without any certainty from the nature of being or the context that it could not be a limited thing that has other things outside of it. They imagine that surreptitiously they understand their situation. Yeah, exactly. You assume that you know the situation. This is how it is, and therefore you cling to this. You're a ruler, huh? You're a shepherd, huh? Stubbornly thick, that's what you are. Confucius along with you. You are all figments in a dream. And just as I take you to be figments in a dream, so am I too a figment in a dream. I just want to tread carefully, and I don't want to use the term figment and dream to negate that each thing is what it is, which we saw earlier, right? All things, without exception, one takes for what they are, and in this way makes them one's accumulated treasure. I don't want to get down to this subsequent section and say, oh, this stuff, it's just figments. This life, it's just a dream. It's inferior to the broader picture. It's obviously limited, but it's not. I'm not trying to say that like the post-dream life and the pre-dream life, or the life in the dream and the life outside of the dream, had to be put in competition, and we're to play partisan for one over the other and say that stuff there is just figments, it's not worth your time. This stuff here is a real deal. Because when we start calling things figments in a dream, sometimes it sounds like we're making it gradated. But over here, and also trying to draw some sort of contest between, which is the real life we should cling to. Whereas back here, we're saying, no, one takes for all things, without exception, one takes for what they are. Everything is what it is. The sage is supposed to appreciate that. So I don't want to play partisan on, well, the afterlife's going to be awesome, the current pre-death life sucks, and we should be partisans for death or something. Words of this order are labelled mere bickering, but there will come a time when, after myriads of generations, all of a sudden, one will come upon a great sage who will know the explanation of all this, and this meeting will come to pass in no more than one day time. Yeah, what's he doing? Just dismissing all the partisan arguments and saying, maybe one day there'll be a big sage who comes and knock you all over? Words of this order are labelled mere bickering. You're a ruler. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I guess maybe he's criticizing the partisanship or the arguments or dialectic, picking sides, and saying, insofar as you're picking sides, it's bickering. A sage will come and knock you both down, and this meeting will come to pass in no more than one day time. He's just trying to render the arguments insignificant, I guess. Maybe you have to reread it. Let us assume that I have a quibble with you. If you win against me and I am not up to you, will you then in fact be right, and will I then be wrong? Okay, we saw this previously in this book. This is where he was talking about the heavenly wheel. It's throughout it. If I beat you and you are not up to me, am I then in fact right and you are then in fact wrong? Is someone right here and is someone else here wrong, or are both right? Or again, are both wrong? And if I and you are incapable of being sure of the matter at hand, then others will certainly be affected by this profound dark muddle, so who is one to employ to sort out the matter objectively? Don't get hung up on the word objective here. They're translating, what is it, like zheng? Okay, is it correct? The right way or correct? Like, what's the answer here? What's the correct answer? Who's going to give the correct statement of whatever we're disputing about? So obviously the overall goal of this chapter is about objectivity. That's a big topic. If we're just talking about not relative to a limited perspective, but each thing as it is, then yes, that's an important phrase to keep in mind. And I guess if subjective is going to be defined as relative to one thing, then yeah, okay, who can sort out the matter objectively? Who can declare the correct answer that is not tied to a perspective? And obviously we can't point to a person or anything really, any limited thing, because that will have its perspective, and therefore it's not setting it out. It's not decreeing the answer. It doesn't have the authority to decree the answer from all perspectives in some sort of determinative way that would overcome each of our perspectives. Instead, of course, the stage is going to take all the perspectives as they are and try to amalgamate them all into a view of the whole. So, I like apples, you don't like apples, a third person, he likes apples too. Ultimately, the sage is not trying to come down and say the guy who says he doesn't like apples is wrong to not like apples because the other two say they do like apples. He's going to say, well, here are the range of tastes, I suppose, and the different perspectives that can be had and how they all stand side by side as part of some amalgamated whole and how it all interrelates. Maybe he'll give a lecture on nutrition and how the apple will affect the body, and how if you have this goal, you should like the apple. If you don't have this goal, you shouldn't. Because that would itself at least be clearer than trying to tie it to some absolute model of, maybe I'm allergic to apples. I don't like the apples. I'm allergic to them. And you like the apples, and all your friends like the apples. Am I wrong for not liking the apple? No, I have my perspective and my body, and I'd be stupid to eat the apple. How is he capable to sort out the matter objectively? Well, yeah, exactly. Shall one employ someone who agrees with me? Okay, so he's just repeating this. Not that it's bad to do so. I like the section. He gets to the end. It follows from all this that I, you, and that third person, agreeing with both of us, have this in common, that they cannot be sure of the matter at hand. Well, so are we to depend on some other? Okay, the point is, so are we to depend on some other to give the, the ruling on right and wrong, given that it's baked into the cake that the judge will have the judge's perspective and that will impact his answer. Whereas I guess what we ought to do is try to let the chips fall where they may, or let each thing be what it is, and not try to rule that one is illegitimate, but rather find some way where it can all be harmoniously together, as it is, with each person having their own view, as some sort of amalgamated whole. So are we to depend on some other? Okay. What do we got here? We got, and then they drop a footnote, 148. Other refers to the allotted divisions of heaven in the following passage. All right, well, I'm not going to read the next section. I don't have time. This other is precisely the this guy, LXY. Okay. I feel like I've argued this so many times. Not in this context, but LXY. Let me get the name. He's basically saying, and we've encountered his commentary in other recordings of this space, Lin Xi Yi, 1193 to 1271. Yeah, he's the one who thinks that there's remember the pipes of heaven, Tian Lai, and the pipes of earth and the pipes of man, and he was the one who thought that the pipes of heaven or whatever were the was sort of an ordering god or something, that made things change along certain paths or whatever. Here we are. The answer to this question is not a rhetorical question. So are we to depend on some other? It's a question of, we're to depend on God to tell us who's right, or the transmogrifier will is the other that we could depend on. Again, I haven't read LXY. I'm just reading the footnote that quotes him, but that's an interesting take on ZhuangZi, not one that I like. But let me get Guoxiang. Then I'm going to end the space. Let's read what Guoxiang says here. Because obviously he's going to say that there is no arbiter that determines one is better than the other. He's going to say you have to have them all together, presumably. I've got it here on my desk because I had it earlier. Yeah, I read this before doing the space. It's somewhere here. Here we go. And I'll give it with the original, as translated by this other author. It's translated by Richard John Lin, ZhuangZi, a new translation of the sayings of Master Zhuang, as interpreted by Guoxiang. And we're going to say, if all this is so, since neither I, nor you, nor anyone else can come to a mutual understanding, should we depend on yet someone else? Since each will regard himself as correct, to depend on yet someone else would still fall short as a means to decide what is right. Therefore, since no one in the whole world can ever have a mutual sense of what is correct, one should just let people find their own self-solution, 自证, and so reach perfection. Yeah, okay. It's prior section as well, yeah. Should we appoint someone who agrees with both you and me to decide it? But since such a one would agree with both you and me, how could he decide it? Comment. If right really were to turn out to be right, then in the whole world no one could ever again succeed at deeming it wrong. If wrong really were to turn out to be wrong, then there would be no reason for anyone ever again to deem it right. However, here is someone who deems right that which he agrees with, and deems wrong that which he disagrees with. But because he provides both disagreement and agreement, he can be no proper judge of what is right or wrong. Thus it is that the phenomenon of right and wrong is born in the love of disputation, and vanishes on the potter's wheel of heaven, Tianjun, where one entrusts it to the simultaneous pursuit of two courses, Lianghang, and then lets it come to rest in self-resolution, Zizhang. Okay, so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, what is... well, the potter's wheel of heaven, Tianjun, is the prior section that we read in another recording, and also elsewhere, but where one entrusts it to the simultaneous pursuit of two courses is right, no, it's wrong. Well, let it come to rest in self-resolution. Let it be what it is in its own right. You think it good in relation to you, I think it bad in relation to me, and the sage is going to amalgamate all these details and accumulate them in his treasure house or whatever, and appreciate the whole as it is without trying to subordinate one part to the other or saying something is more real or less real or better or worse in some perspectival sense. But really he can accommodate the whole of what is and how all things interrelate. And I'm going on my own little lecture at that point, I think. Anyway, thank you to anyone who listens to this. Again, I just... trying to get us further through this chapter, get to the end of it. I went and read far ahead some time ago, and then I just didn't really return to it and finish these last few sections of Qi Wu Luan for the recordings. I don't think anyone's in the... Alright, good. So I can just end it there. Alright, thank you, and have a nice day, everyone.